Years of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration has recorded milestones, but not without emerging challenges of our time. And tonight we will focus on development index of his government in the last 5 years. Have a good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Weekend File. President Muhammadu Buhari began his second term in office on May 29, 2019, pledging to sustain the upward development trajectory he started in 2015. 5 years into his 8 years tenure, some analysts say his strengthened commitment to transform the country came alive with a tenacious pursuit of agricultural revolution, doubling down on provision of infrastructure and sustaining strategies embedded in the economic diversification policy of government. The turn of events within the period under review indicated no sign that the fight against corruption is abating. So is the fight to rid the nation of insurgency. Several socio-economic mechanisms to empower Nigerians and reduce unemployment are said to have received greater attention. But the economic recovery and growth plan and perhaps other development instruments may have been pushed into glitches riding on coronavirus pandemic, which disrupted national budget plan and consequently altered initial projections. What constituted a major challenge to the Buhari administration in the past few months has been the onerous task of re-strategizing in order to conquer the adverse effects of COVID-19 on all sectors and to sustain already laid down development projections. Today, we will learn more about the intricacies of tackling emerging issues and how the administration fared in its quest to foster change in the nation's governance milieu. My guest tonight is Ajuri Ngelale, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. I am Kurian Umar. It's always a pleasure to welcome you here where we dissect national issues. It's Weekend File, which starts now with the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the reconstitution of the board of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, after the expiration of the term of the board members appointed in 2016. Members of the new board, according to a release by a special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, are Mohammed Lawal, Northeast, Tajuddin Umar, Northeast, Adamu Mahmoud Atta, North Central, Senator Magnus Abe, South-South, Dr. Stephen Dike, Southeast, and Chief Powers Akinyelure, Southwest. The new board will be in place for 3 years. President Buhari has condoled with family, friends, and professional colleagues of former Group Managing Director of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Dr. Meikanti Kachala Baru, who passed on in the early hours of today. The president, in a statement, noted that the former GMD worked very hard to initiate reforms in virtually all departments of the corporation, bringing it up to speed with global trends and best practices. President Buhari acknowledges Dr. Baru's contributions to ensuring stability in the oil sector in Nigeria with a more guaranteed supply and predictable price regime that weakened unscrupulous parallel marketers, especially during festive seasons.
Dr. Meikanti Baru was the 18th Group Managing Director of the NNPC, a consummate mechanical engineer who steered the affairs of the corporation from July 4th, 2016 to July 7th, 2019. A statement by the NNPC Group General Manager, Group Public Affairs, Dr. Kenny Obatero, announced the passing on of Dr. Meikanti Baru after a brief illness in a hospital in Abuja. The release says NNPC Group Managing Director Mele Kyari expressed shock over the sudden death of Dr. Meikanti Baru, describing him as a man of exemplary character and disposition. Dr. Baru was 60 years old. In Abuja, Lydia Samson, NTA News.
The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, has described the death of Dr. Kanti Baru, former group managing director of the NNPC, as a huge loss to the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. OPEC's Secretary General Dr. Mohamed Sanusi Barkindo, in a condolence message, described Baru as a hardworking and committed professional who believed in transparency and accountability. He prayed that God Almighty grants his soul rest and expressed condolences to the family, the oil industry, and Nigeria at large. In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari's nephew, Alhaji Ibrahim Dauda, is dead. Ibrahim Dauda died in Daura, Katsina State, following a prolonged illness. In a condolence message, President Buhari said the death has robbed the family and the Daura community of one of its finest gentlemen. I am deeply touched and devastated by the passing of yet another family member, a man who had demonstrated amazing kindness and honesty in all his dealings. The president said he prayed God to forgive the soul of the deceased and reward his great and noble deeds with paradise. The deceased is survived by a number of children, including Dauda Ibrahim, a chief administrative officer in the house, in the State House here in Abuja. Now, India records a daily jump of 7,964 new COVID-19 infections as the United Kingdom death toll from people who have tested positive for COVID-19 rose by 38,376. Let's now join Uche Ugochukwu for a global update on COVID-19.
The tally by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control as at 29th May 2020 shows there are 387 new cases of COVID-19 in the country. Lagos, FCT, Jigawa and Edo are top on the list, while Plateau, Yobe, Gombe, Bauchi and Ondo are at the bottom. There are now 9,304 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Discharged is 2,697 and 261 deaths so far. India has extended its coronavirus lockdown until June 30 in high-risk zones, but permitted restaurants, malls and religious buildings to reopen elsewhere from June 8, despite a record high number of cases detected nationwide on Saturday. India reported a record daily jump of 7,964 new COVID-19 infections on Saturday and has so far recorded 173,763 positive cases and 4,971 deaths. The United Kingdom death toll from people who have tested positive for COVID-19 rose by 215 to 38,376, and Spain has recorded more than 238,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with more than 27,000 deaths. Globally, the figure released by Johns Hopkins University as at 6 p.m. local time shows that 6,086,407 cases have been confirmed globally. 368,468 have died, while 2,697,211 recovered. Uche Ugochukwu, NTA News.
268 stranded Nigerians in China have safely arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, today. Foreign Affairs Minister Geoffrey Onyema confirms this in his official Twitter handle, says all the 268 returnees will go on the 14 days mandatory quarantine stipulated by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and the Federal Ministry of Health. In another development, another batch of more than 300 British citizens stranded in Nigeria have been flown back home on a chartered flight from Lagos. Ken Ebeluge tells us more.
Ayodele Adenuga and Lanre Ajibaye are residents in the United Kingdom. They are among the 100 British nationals set to return home from Nigeria on 3 chartered flights by the UK government. They say, having been stranded in the country for more than 2 months as a result of the coronavirus pandemic lockdown, the joy of reuniting with their loved ones could not be quantified.
Elated, very happy to join my family back in the United Kingdom. after spending almost 3 months in Nigeria. And I really appreciate the United Kingdom government for repatriating us back to United Kingdom.
It's terrible, but because almost everything that I came to do in Nigeria, I couldn't fulfill them, but I just had to go back to UK to go and start afresh with my life.
However, for other British citizens who wish to return home, the British Deputy High Commissioner said,
"The British government has put in £75 million to get British people from all over the world back home to the UK. So they're using that money to subsidise the flights. But everybody needs to pay for their ticket. If people don't have enough money to be able to pay themselves, then there are government loans available."
It will be recorded that more than 2,000 British citizens were flown to the United Kingdom on several chartered flights in April and May. In Lagos, Ken Igbeluge, NTA News.
We are still in Lagos. The Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has dedicated his first year in office to frontline workers in the battle against the coronavirus pandemic. Nosa Usula reports that the governor also virtually inaugurated 18 projects in his office.
Workers in the health sector who have been the frontliners in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic promise to improve on the facilities in the health sector.
We're not out of it yet. We're not even sure we've reached the peak yet. But as we go along, they say delay is denial. We certainly cannot wait until when it's over before we begin to acknowledge our own.
The governor stated that while it was not possible to take the risky part of the job away, it is absolutely necessary to make provisions for a robust compensation plan that would make the health workers feel appreciated, considering the risk they are always exposed to. Meanwhile, at the inauguration of the projects, which include a concrete jetty with shoreline protection at Ikorodu, rehabilitation, upgrading and construction of road projects at Shomolu, Mushin and Badagry, over 500 houses and apartments in various parts of the state, and construction of classroom blocks in both primary and secondary schools in different local government council areas of the state. Governor Sanwo-Olu said even though the last 4 months have been very challenging in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, governments remain committed to the Greater Lagos vision. In Lagos, Nosa Usula, NTA News.
And now more coronavirus-related stories. The Nigerian Private Sector Coalition Against COVID-19 has donated an equipped isolation center to Niger State government towards fighting COVID-19 pandemic in that state. Governor Abubakar Sani Bello, who inaugurated the facility located at the Hajj camp in Mina, applauded the initiative. Suleiman Kudogi reports.
The Nigerian Private Sector Coalition Against COVID-19 is a joint initiative of leading private sector leaders and the Central Bank of Nigeria launched to support the government in the fight against COVID-19 in Nigeria. Items donated include 100 beds, 100 hospital overhead tables, mobile X-ray machine, and 1,000 personal protective wares, among others, worth millions of naira. Governor Abubakar Sani Bello appreciated the initiative and assured of continued partnership as well as effective use of the facilities provided.
You can't just produce children and you allow the society to take care of your responsibility. If you have the ability and capacity to produce children, then you must have the ability and capacity to take very good care of them and give them the required parental guidance. And that is my stand on this. We'll make sure we take care of them. Soon we're working on a policy that will ensure that everyone has the opportunity to go to school.
The governor noted that the isolation center will be put to use for the Almajiris returned back to the state from other parts of the country for medical examination before uniting them with their respective families. In Mina, Suleiman Kodogi, NTA News.
Now, the source of the fire that raised Olale Market in Shomolu area of Lagos to the ground this Saturday morning is yet to be identified. However, Olumide Eguntola, who visited the market, reports that no life was lost and no injury was sustained.
For some time now, Lagos has been a bit quiet in the area of disaster until this morning when emergency responders were alerted that Olale Market in Shomolu area of Lagos State was on fire. As I talk to you now, everything inside the market has been completely destroyed. The pains in the heart of property owners who are just like other Nigerians, struggling to sustain their livelihood as coronavirus affects the global economy can best be imagined. Eyewitness account says the prompt response of the fire service authorities prevented the spread of the inferno to other areas.
But you just help that what happen? Is it bomb or not? You just come across. You have to come and see the light too much. Nobody can face it. We run.
There's no light. There's no light that can cause anything. Nobody in the market can see in the market. Then when the market is going, when the fire is going on, we try to locate the security to come and open the market for us so that people will rescue some their goods. But the security said that the key is not with him.
Maybe there was a spark from one of the shop, which was identified to be a computer shop, down the last line.
What we are appealing to the government is to come to our aid. This is our source of income.
In Lagos, Olumide Gotola, NTA News.
The Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development has condemned the killing of Nigerians by bandits in communities in Sabon Birni local government area of Sokoto State. In a statement, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Omar Farouk, said that it was shocking that terrorists operating as bandits would commit mass murder in peaceful communities where innocent citizens were engaged in agrarian life without posing threats to anyone. Sadia Omar Farouk, while lamenting the displacement of innocent citizens from their home, she directed the relevant agencies of the ministry to swiftly commence action and work in collaboration with the appropriate agencies of the Sokoto State government in providing much-needed relief to survivors of the attack. Following the banditry attacks in some parts of Sokoto State, President Muhammadu Buhari directed the Chief of Defense Staff to undertake a quick assessment of the area was hit by the bandits to enable government to do the needful. Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila reports that the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, visited Sokoto to carry out the directive.
In the wake of the banditry attacks in Sokoto Eastern Zone, there were several calls from concerned citizens and organizations for quick intervention to save lives and property in the affected areas. The Nigerian Air Force, led by the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Baba Abubakar, and other heads of operations in the airspace, met in Sokoto to discuss on how best to neutralize the bandits. The meeting, held behind closed doors, brought together various stakeholders to brainstorm on how to salvage the state from the hands of the bandits. During the visit, the Chief of Air Staff inspected the aviation plant of the Sultan Abubakar III International Airport in Sokoto and other areas of operations. At the Sultan's Palace, Air Marshal Sadiq Baba Abubakar said he is in the state to carry out a presidential directive.
Our appeal to the people of Sokoto State is to help us with relevant information that will support our operations.
Sultan Muhammad Saad Abubakar described the killing of over 70 people in Sabon Birni local government area as inhuman and tragic, calling for massive recruitment, training of personnel and provision of state-of-the-art facilities to the security apparatus to enable the country overcome the security challenges. The Sokoto Eastern Zone had in recent times experienced attacks by bandits, leading to loss of many lives. In Sokoto, Abdurrahman Usman Jibrila, NTA News.
Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, Professor Oluwatoyin Temitayo Ogundibe, is 60, and President Buhari celebrates his milestone. Laced with great and memorable achievements, President Muhammadu Buhari extols Professor Ogundibe's commitment to upgrading and expanding of the department's faculties and institutes in the university, particularly paying attention to the dynamic global market, evolving trends in research, and most importantly, the need for character, competence and competitiveness. President Buhari praised that the Almighty God will continue to strengthen the highly respected academic and author and grant him wisdom to achieve his dreams for the institution and the country. In another development, President Muhammadu Buhari rejoices with the renowned writer, journalist, columnist, actor, dancer, and dramatist Akoguntola Adeniyi as he turns 75. The president congratulates the entire pen fraternity on the landmark birthday of the man who made writing look so fluid and easy through his column, Abba Sahid, which was a compelling read. And he plied, of course, his trade for decades in sketch newspapers, Nigerian Tribune, Daily Times of Nigeria, and many others, where he held top editorial positions as editor-in-chief and chief executive officer. The president equally salutes the business savvy of Adeniyi, which led him to found the Canada-Africa Chamber of Commerce in 1996. The chairman board of the FRSC, Malam Bukari Bello, has restated the commission's drive towards rewarding excellence and hard work in line with the administrative philosophy of the present leadership of the Corps. The board, at the virtual meeting with senior officers of the commission, approved the promotion of 10 Corps commanders to the rank of Assistant Corps Marshal and 32 Deputy Corps commanders to the rank of Corps Commander. Corps Marshal Dr. Boboya Adeyemi also charged officers and men of the FRSC to put in their best, actualizing the vision of the Corps in reducing carnage on the roads, as well as ensuring full compliance with COVID-19 safety guidelines by motorists. You are watching the NTA, and the program is Weekend File. Today we are commemorating the first anniversary of the second term in office of President Muhammadu Buhari, and of course is the Development Index. We are awash with activities of his government within this period. And my guest tonight is Ajuri Ngalale, the SSA to the President on Public Affairs. And my conversation with him starts after the correspondence report, coming up in a moment.
I wish to once again commend the frontline workers across the country who, on a daily basis, risk everything to ensure we win this fight. For those who got infected in the line of duty, rest assured that government will do all it takes to support you and your families during this exceedingly difficult period. I will also take this opportunity to assure you all that your safety, well-being, and welfare remains paramount to our government. I am using this opportunity to express our deepest condolences to the families of all Nigerians that have lost their loved ones as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is our collective loss, and we share your grief.
A united Nigeria, strong in the fight against COVID-19, to bring a voice of hope, to join hands to bring an end to this pandemic.
Kandi diko hafia si akwada agha n'otu aka ahụ ka ndị nwere ikike ịhụ maka ahụike si dịkwa nkwadebe maka ọgụ a.
Ní ayé àtijọ́, a farapamọ́ lábẹ́ àpáta Olúmọ, a sì borí ogun náà. Àkókò tó láti farapamọ́ sínú ilé.
Mu ci gaba da kaɗaita juna, kuma mu kiyaye wuraren da akwai cunkoson mutane.
Mukumulo biba brizinko lokachile.
Womere ya mevogja wokura bowe kokekokyo, woje seri sanitizer wokura bowe.
Fulbe ballen ko emeden kauten jude kaben dun nyaw coronavirus. Daroden e wuro ballen gomnati ballen ko emeden dun nyaw dun waray dun dillay.
One Nigeria, different languages, and we shall surely prevail.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibilities in partnership with Nigerian Television Authority. You can't beat the rich.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19. A corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 22 55 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
Make your home the place to be with GoTV's super cool kids channels.
That sounds fun.
From funky friends that'll keep even the little ones busy.
All right, everybody, let's do this!
To learn as you watch educational shows for curious young minds.
You can do some amazing things.
There's plenty for everyone. Tune in to our kids shows and get everything you need to keep the kids entertained and learning the fun way. GoTV, live it, love it.
We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
And you're welcome back. Public analysts say being responsible is what makes leaders accountable and outstanding. Now, the Nigerian economy under the present administration, experts say, has been on a steady growth trajectory. And in this report, correspondent Chimobi Wharton-Naji takes a look at major economic highlights of the Buhari administration 5 years down the line.
It's been 5 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's mandate of steering the wheels of the Nigerian economy and the first year into his second tenure in office. Now, while the economy has witnessed some low moments, experts insist that the Buhari-led administration has made remarkable progress in repositioning the economy to achieving greatness in due time. In 2019, the Nigerian economy ramped up a 2.27% growth from the 1.8% recorded in 2018. 2.9% was the projected GDP growth for 2020, but that was not to be. The first 4 years started low, occasioned by falling oil prices, which was the main source of revenue for the nation. The slowdown culminated in a recession in 2016, necessitating stringent measures to reflate the economy predicated on accountability and transparency. A medium-term plan was birthed, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan (ERGP), with the objectives of restoring growth, investing in the people and building a globally competitive economy, and through concerted efforts, Nigeria exited recession within a year. This worked well with the budget and the medium-term expenditure framework, the MTEF. The ERGP is expiring this year, and it is to be replaced with the Agenda 2050 plan being formulated along with a medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025. In January, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the 2020 Finance Act into law. Its strategic objectives include promoting fiscal equity and mitigating instances of regressive taxation, reforming domestic tax laws to align with global best practices, supporting micro, small and medium enterprises in line with the ease of doing business reforms, and raising revenue for the government to fund the 2020 budget. By February, coronavirus crept in like a nightmare, eroding global growth, Nigeria inclusive, sending all prices to their knees. The 2020 budget, which came into effect record time, is now being reviewed as the Brent crude fell below the budgeted benchmark. Recovery became paramount. Monetary and fiscal stimulus have continually been injected to reverse an impending recession. In cushioning the effect of the pandemic, President Buhari approved a 500 billion naira COVID-19 crisis intervention fund.
The President has also approved that the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning should engage with the Central Bank of Nigeria to agree on a debt and interest moratorium for state and for the federal government on CBN-funded loans in order to create fiscal space for the states and the Federation.
Part of the fiscal stimulus package is an external borrowing plan of $5.5 billion from multilateral institutions. The CBN offered a combined 3.5 trillion naira stimulus package.
The CBN will continue to monitor again all developments on the COVID-19 infection and design appropriate monetary response to protect the people and economy.
Policymakers are working hard with the expectation that a recession can be averted and growth restored before the end of 2020. In Abuja, Lekatun Babatulu, NTA News.
Now, from the position of a sole determinant of the size of the national pulse, the once opaque oil and gas sector has become more transparent, driven by federal government's unprecedented intervention to link it to the larger economy. Gideon Samson x-rays strategies employed in the last 5 years to reposition this sector in line with government's diversification process.
Rocky is a word which has become synonymous with the global oil and gas industry. From the very beginning of the Buhari-led administration, this sole driver of the Nigerian economy has moved in an undulating trend from very low prices and revenues to a ray of hope occasioned by near stability, resulting to a 2020 budget predicated on a $57 per barrel and suddenly to a zero level never experienced in history.
The expected excess supply volumes on the market, particularly in the second quarter, are beyond anything we have seen before.
Soon will prevail, and all the projects that we have planned will progress as we all want them to.
Despite Nigeria's vulnerability to the current COVID-19 reality, a solid foundation laid early in the life of the Buhari administration has placed the country on sound footing. The agenda of the Petroleum Ministry is anchored on repositioning the sector, not just as the sole source of revenue, but in linking the sector to the entire economy for value addition. The National Oil Company, the NNPC, on its part, is set to commence construction of the 614-kilometer Ajaokuta Kano-Kaduna natural gas pipeline AKK. It will traverse Kogi, Niger, FCT, Kaduna and Kano and feed power plants and industries along its corridors. Also, the NNPC has paid 15% counterpart funding for the $2.9 billion project, while the Federal Executive Council has approved the issuance of a sovereign guarantee to cover the rest of the funding coming from the China Export and Credit Insurance Corporation. Considered the largest financial deal in Africa so far in 2020, the Nigerian LNG Limited concluded final investment decision on its Train 7 project at the end of 2019 and signed an EPC contract for the project in May 2020. A financing arrangement worth $3 billion was also concluded. NNPC owns a 49% stake in NLNG on behalf of the Nigerian government.
We know that getting the Train 7 is a very important activity. First, it will create 10,000 jobs in this country, direct jobs, and another 40,000 of indirect jobs, and another $9 billion of income to the Federation.
Also worthy of commendation is the removal of the fuel subsidy regime and replacement by a market-led price modulation mechanism.
As far as the availability of petrol is concerned in Nigeria, it's fantastic.
The modular refinery initiative of the Buhari administration has delivered 3 completed private sector-led projects in Rivers, Imo, and Delta states, and several others are in progress. Another critical aspect of intervention by the Buhari administration likely to manifest soon is the PIB, which is now at an advanced stage awaiting passage at the National Assembly. In Abuja, Lydia Samson, NTA News.
Thank you, Lydia. And here in the studio, I have Ajuri Ngalali, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. You're welcome to the program.
It's good to be with you.
Right. It's good to just listen to the report on oil and gas.
Right.
Because considering what has happened lately, it does appear that the major victim of COVID-19 is the oil sector in terms of the economy. But I'll start this conversation by giving us an overview, of what has taken place developmentally across sectors in Nigeria. Perhaps you will narrow it to the issue of oil and gas.
Absolutely, Kieran. In fact, I think I would start there. When you look at the
wide array of interventions in the oil and gas sector over the past 5 years. You'd be looking at some being regulatory in nature, and then others are infrastructural. I'm going to start with infrastructural interventions. Just take a look now at the pivot away, a very strategic pivot away from raw crude oil into gas. The president clearly understands, President Muhammadu Buhari, that by 2040, crude oil is not going to be the hot commodity that it is today, and indeed gas will continue to be into the unforeseeable future. And as a result of that, we have seen under this administration the FID signed, the final investment decision signed on Train 7, NLNG Train 7, which in effect, for those who may not know exactly what that entails, is going to add a third of our total current gas production capacity. A third of it will be added to the current total of our gas production capacity. That is absolutely massive and a big step in the right direction. That's a $12 billion project that indeed is going to create thousands of indirect and direct jobs as it goes into construction in the soonest possible time frame. You also have the fact that when the president came into office, we had a situation where we had joint venture cash call arrears with the IOCs owing them upwards of $6 billion. The president was able to negotiate it down from approximately $6.8 billion down to about $5.1 billion. And even with depressed oil prices, reduced revenues, the president was able to assiduously pay that down to now less than $3 billion. So we're making it right with our partners in terms of the IOCs, and that has also enhanced confidence in them that indeed they can begin making the kinds of massive investments in deep offshore exploration projects that can benefit all of us in this country in terms of enhanced revenues. On the other side of it, the president has also taken a very important step in terms of legislative interventions. We have obviously seen within the last 1 year, the first year of the second term administration of the president, that the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract amendment was signed into law, essentially ensuring that we, for the first time, will receive the revenues due to us on deep offshore production fields. Specifically, you're looking at Akpo, Agbami, Erha, and some of those deep offshore fields where we had been making no royalties. Now we have about an additional $1.5 billion that's going to be coming in to the Federation account every single year as a result of the passage of that amendment. So there has been so much going on. Now, and you look at, it's not just about the gas production and the legislative intervention. You're also looking at what has been done in terms of the adjoining infrastructure, because the president takes a look at all of these sectors and looks at how we can meticulously put together a blueprint that takes into cognizance all of the allied matters. For example, the road infrastructure. So you have, for example, the president now has put in place Boni Bodo Road. We are at an advanced stage of progress in the completion of that road, a 120 billion naira road that will link NLNG in Boni Island to the mainland so that we can facilitate the easy transportation of gas products through the country. That's a massively strategic and important project. And then, of course, throughout River State, you see the Enugu-Port Harcourt Road being worked on very diligently. So now, if you look at Aba-Port Harcourt Expressway, for example, if you compare the way it is now to how it was in 2015, you wouldn't believe you're standing in the same place. So there are so many different aspects to what the president has done in terms of oil and gas.
Yes, I want to come in here, to ask you to further expatiate on the issue of gas, because Nigeria has over 2 trillion cubic meters of gas, in fact, the highest in the world.
That's right.
And of course, the value chain, the value addition, in gas, is lacking. And people talk about methanol, which is a good replacement for petrol and so on. Now, looking at what you've said earlier on, that we, in the next the next 20 years or more, that oil is going to be a key economic factor globally.
Well, so there are more. If we go directly into gas, there are multiple things to look at. First of all, you would look at the fact that the president has put together a negotiation that was successfully concluded with the Chinese firm for the construction of a $2.9 billion in 614-kilometer gas pipeline. It's known as the Ajaokuta Ajaokuta to AKK pipeline, Ajaokuta, Kaduna, Kano pipeline running through Abuja out of the Niger Delta. What that is going to enable us to do is, and the reason why we were even able to get the financing with the Chinese firm was because the president put in a sovereign guarantee behind it to assure our partners that indeed they are going to be secure in terms of, recovering the funds put into the project. But in effect, this is going to enable us to use the gas capacity in the Niger Delta to eventually get to a point where we can pass it not just up through Kaduna and Kano, but beyond Kano, trans-Sahara into North Africa, so that we can have an inbuilt export market for our gas. The president is not only looking at that as he's doing that, he's also talking with the Moroccan government, ensuring that we can take the West African gas pipeline and extend that up through Morocco and eventually pass that across the Atlantic so that we can be reaching Western Europe with Nigerian gas. That is going to revolutionize the future of the Nigerian economy, and all of that is very much in play with what the president is doing. And many of these things, you will not see them immediately. Some of them will be immediate, some of them will be medium term, some of them will be long term, but the president is putting us on course to go down that road. The last thing I want to mention, Kieran, very quickly, is for decades now, we have lost tens of billions of dollars in the value-added processing sector, subsector within the oil and gas sector. What do I mean? IOCs that are doing deep offshore drilling and exploration in Nigerian fields are going to Singapore, South Korea, and all of these other countries where they have value-additive oil-based industry, oil technology industries, where they're getting all of the component parts for their drilling and all of the different things that they need. Whereas, and the jobs are there, the money is there. Meanwhile, we're losing out on all of that. So what the president has now done is he has now put together five major national oil and gas parks. It's NOGAP, the NOGAP scheme. That's essentially going to build industrial facilities across the Niger Delta where we can manufacture and fabricate the parts that our IOCs will now be using so that we can create those jobs.
Okay, I'll pause you here and we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll have two more reports to do before we re-engage you with this conversation, because I wanted to talk about some certain infrastructure, such as Ajaokuta State Complex. That will be when we'll come back. Let's take a short break now.
Mama, Uncle Kim just called me. His wife just gave birth. Hey! If not be God, though, now who go do amo? Now who go do amo? I thank God. Boy or girl? I was too excited to ask. Let me get my phone and call him. Mama, it's a... Mama, what's wrong?
So, I don't fit see my grandpikin now as they do Obodo Oyibo.
Mama, I have a surprise that will cheer you up.
Introducing Sunday Data Plan. Enjoy Sunday browsing. 200 Naira gets you a whopping 1.25 gigabytes. Glow Unlimited.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. A delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Available in stores at 18 Naira.
25th February 2020, Nigeria. It is real. It is a nightmare. It is killing people all over the world. It is COVID-19. Compliance with the various states in Nigeria, the current measures will flatten the curves. Shutting down is not an act of wickedness, but an act to save lives. Stay home, stay safe. Observe social distance. Always put on a face mask while leaving your house. Make sure you are on a tricycle alone. Cars and buses cannot carry more than half their passengers. Always remember to wash your hands. Together, we will defeat COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibilities.
Now believe this Koro thing.
You know, if you touch black man, if you like, gather the whole Niger, come together, make the cough. Nothing.
Which one you want?
Give me V&D.
I beg, get small pieces.
How much you want to give him?
Give me 200. Take your change now. You don't want your changes.
My people, this coronavirus, na serious matter. May una wash your hands regularly. Come use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. If you no see water, wash your hand. Make una sit down for house. You see this virus, so e no get leg. Now we dey waka kurukere. No waka around, make the virus for die. No forget, say, the betterment of our people. Now for your handy day.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
You're welcome back. And one of the sectors which Nigerians identified as having recorded success or successes is in the aspect of the fight against corruption and all the efforts being made by government to bring about transparency in governance. Now, Olabude Arewa has more on that.
Nigeria's history cannot be complete without mentioning the many anti-corruption trials involving notable personalities. In 2015, for example, the $2.1 billion arms deal was exposed following the interim committee report on arms procurement, which indicted former National Security Advisor Colonel Sambo Dasuki. This led to his arrest and prosecution, along with the founder of Dow Communications PLC, Chief Raymond Dokpesi, former Governor of Sokoto State, Atayeru Bafarawa, and the former Minister of State for Finance, Bashir Yuguda. Of note also were the convictions recorded by the EFCC and the ICPC against former PDP Publicity Secretary, Olisa Metu, along with ex-governors Joshua Darie and Jolly Yame. The EFCC has recovered 794 billion naira between 2015 and 2019. The ICPC, on its part, is intensifying the scrutiny of the personnel costs of ministries, departments, and agencies, has yielded more than 41 billion naira in recoveries from inflated personnel budgets.
Corruption is not a good thing because all of us, we are going to survive it. And how do we fight it is individual discipline. You know that this thing is not good. You don't do it.
The ICPC and the EFCC combined recovered over 113 billion naira in the last 1 year. The EFCC, on its part, secured the conviction of 1,270 persons. The success of the anti-corruption fight is also evident in the return to Nigeria of $311 million Abacha loot. The current administration has taken further steps to promote transparency, with the current advocacy for states, local governments, and communities to own the initiative and take the message of transparency to all nooks and crannies of the country. In Abuja, Olabude Arewa, NTA News.
All right, we are still with Ajuri Ngelale, the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. Now let's talk about corruption. This is an area that the government has been, of course, commended variously and at different quarters. Tell us more about what has happened with respect to the fight against corruption.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that a lot has happened, and there's still a lot to be done. The president would acknowledge that as well. And see, when you look at the raw figures, let's just look at how, first of all, you deal with corruption in two ways. One is preventative, one is now dealing with it once it has now manifested and people have already stolen. Let's now look at it from the preventative side first. The president, upon assuming office, immediately put into effect the presidential audit of the civil service, where the president was able to uncover about 54,000 different ghost workers, saving the nation, taking up about 200 billion naira every single year in fake salaries to these ghost workers, which obviously were being diverted to some bureaucratic fat cats. Now, that has been cut out. So since 2015, you're looking at almost $1 trillion that has been saved as a result of the presidential continuous audit initiative. Now, beyond that, you're now looking at what has been done in terms of those who have stolen, and now you're trying to recover. The asset recoveries have more than tripled from the period of what was recovered between 2009 and 2015 to what has been recovered from 2015 now to 2020. We have seen triple in terms of the asset
especially
recoveries.
the Abacha loot.
And then, of course, no, that's even separate. I'm even talking of the Naira recoveries that have been stolen from inside of the country. And then, of course, when it comes to the Abacha loot, we have seen an uptick in the relationship between Nigeria and our foreign partners as a result of the increased confidence in not just the personal integrity of the president, but also in the larger clampdown on corruption. And as a result, as you said, we have seen a series of returns of the Abacha loot. And the president has strategically put in place monitoring and evaluation mechanisms attached to the return of the Abacha loot in a way that was not done before, so that the funds that come back to the country are judiciously utilized for the development of sectors that will have a direct impact on the living standards of Nigerians. That had not been the case before. So now you're seeing infrastructure now being upgraded from the Second Niger Bridge, 206 billion naira, Second Niger Bridge in the southeast, now to the over 120 billion naira Lagos-Ibadan Expressway in the southwest, and of course the over 120 billion naira Abuja-Kaduna Zaria-Kano Expressway in the north. Those are all going to be three beneficiaries of the latest return of over $300 million. So, with all of that said, looking at the rate in which at which prosecutions and imprisonments have upticked, particularly as it relates to members, even whether the PDP or whether APC, all have been indiscriminately affected. And this is really important. When you have a sitting chief whip of the Senate going through a prosecutorial process, then being imprisoned, it sends a signal to the rest of the country that indeed nobody is above the law.
Exactly. Then I'm still talking corruption and how it has affected or stalled the development of certain infrastructure, very valuable infrastructure, such as Ajaokuta Steel Complex, for instance, and some other similar projects abandoned over the years. The corruption played a key role in all of that. But tell us more about Ajaokuta, because of course we have learned that something new is happening at Ajaokuta Steel Complex.
Absolutely. So what is happening in Ajaokuta is a direct result of the president's pivot in our foreign policy approach from being a conventional, fairly directionless foreign policy as we've had it over the decades, just getting involved in different places, not for any particular reason, to now being strategically functioned to perform economic diplomacy. That means if we're signing deals with, if we're engaging with countries, it's because we're looking for deals that of mutual benefit that can develop Nigerian sectors locally. Ajaokuta was a product of an engagement between this administration and the government of the Russian Federation, led by President Vladimir Putin, and there was an agreement struck that $1.4 billion would be put together for the resuscitation of not just the Ajaokuta steel plant, by the way, complex, but also the very strategic National Iron Ore Mining Company, NIAMCO, in Itakpe. And so you have $400 million that's going to the resuscitation of the Iron Ore Mining Company, which is obviously the iron ore that you will now use to supply the steel complex to produce your steel. And then about $1 billion in conjunction with the Frexim Bank and the Russian Export Center for the resuscitation of the Ajaokuta steel complex. Now, the president is not taking anything in isolation. Everything is integrated. So now, the president had resuscitated the over 300-kilometer Ajaokuta Itakpe Wari rail line. That's very strategic because it's important that we decongest the roads in that region, and we also link it up so that we can carry the cargo from the Iron Ore Mining Company to the steel complex via rail. So all of these things are being worked together in synergy.
All right, a final question for this segment of our program. COVID-19, set in a few months ago and disrupted the budgeting plan, as well as also put a cog in the wheel of progress of all the entire economic plan. Of course, the worst hit is of course the oil, which is the main source of our funding. Now, re-strategizing and of course reformulating all development structures must be involved. So before we can go ahead, based on what is on ground now with respect to coronavirus pandemic, which everybody or every nation is fighting. Now, how can this government manage the budget they have put together before for 2020, and of course the pandemic, which has of course struck
What you're looking at is, let me just start from agriculture. In view of COVID-19, President Muhammadu Buhari constituted the Economic Sustainability Committee chaired by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, of course having all of the leaders of the economy, the Minister of Finance, the CBN Governor, NNPC GMD, and the Minister of Works, Agriculture, and many of the very strategic job-creating ministries. Now, they came together and essentially said, how can we rebuild this nation across sectors with a particular focus on targeting indigenous Nigerian companies that employ wholly indigenous Nigerian labor, that will use wholly indigenous Nigerian raw materials. So if you're constructing a road, are you using Nigerian bitumen in accordance with Presidential Executive Order 003 and 005 on local content and local science and engineering procurements? All of these things have now been put together, and they've said, okay, look, first of all, let's look at the agricultural component of it, because it's cross sectors. The agricultural component essentially entails a partnership between the federal government and state governors, where state governors have committed to giving massive hectorate of land to the federal government, for the federal government to recruit and employ millions of young people to do an unprecedented land clearing and cultivation project that would essentially target high-value export commodities that are not currently being developed at a massive scale in Nigeria, such as cocoa, beef, dairy, and several others. But there are so many things to get into. I wish we had more time.
Exactly. I mean, there could be a second part of this conversation, right? Because we need to get more information on what the government is doing to bring about the change that everybody has been yearning for. At this point, I'd like to thank you for being part of our show this evening. Jury Ngelale is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. All right, now we take another break. We'll be back shortly. No more break. Let's go sports.
Hertha Berlin continued their unbeaten run since the restart of the German Bundesliga, beating Hotspur 2-0 at home in their match day 29 encounter. The game, which was televised live on the NTA network, saw Javaro De Rossi open